Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Jeff Mendelson, and this is the One Big Tip podcast. And today, my guest is Carrie Jemima Cooper. Jem is a former professional ballerina turned elite endurance athlete, a psychology graduate, survivor, serial entrepreneur, and world traveler. She serves high aspiring and high achieving people to achieve sustainable levels in success in business while maintaining complete lifestyle alignment. Jem has previously consulted for international companies, worked as the European Business Development Director for a leading professional sports marketing agency, and has ran 5 profitable businesses, all of which starting from scratch. Jem, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for giving that little intro.
Yeah. So I really appreciate you coming on today. You have a lot of accomplishments there. I was wondering if you can take a few minutes and just sort of bring us up to speed of who you are and how you became so amazing.
Oh, well, that's very, very kind of you to say. So yeah, it's been quite a journey. I started off 4 years old taking up classical ballet, and that was very much the only thing in my everything. And my future was mapped out from a very, very young age. And I got into kind of the elite performance world, really training very seriously from about the age of 8 or 9, and then just kind of going through there. But unfortunately, a period of pretty severe illness kind of changed my path somewhat. I did eventually end up as getting a professional contract as a ballerina over in London. But one thing and another, and I realized that ultimately I had to step out of that world in order to really live to the fullest. And at the tender age of 19, I had kind of lost my everything, lost my plan, not knowing what to do. It was very much a case of, okay, well, this is a bit rubbish. What do I do about it next, and how do I bounce back from this? And I ended up heading off to university, because that's what you do when you don't know what to do. Is where I actually found my next sport, which was triathlon. So I am a half Ironman athlete, and that was a really amazing and very formative experience for me. I overcame a lot of fears, a lot of uncertainty. I was so not sort of born or physically, I was not really anything going for me to take up triathlon, coming from a ballet background. But I loved the fight, and I loved the mental strength that it was developing and it required as well. And actually through my sport was how I actually got into business, realizing that it was a pretty expensive thing to do. Triathlon, I thought ballet was expensive, but triathlon was a whole nother game. And that led me to sports marketing. And so I started consulting, and I had a couple of consulting agencies. I worked for a number of clients. And then I partnered with a company over in America as a director of their marketing firm. So I developed a marketing firm, which was really quite successful, but I learned a lot of lessons in how to do a lot of things right and how to do a lot of things wrong. And eventually kind of I decided that to go a slightly different way. And so bringing all of this kind of experience together, I decided to step away from a lot of what I'd done before. It was a few companies in between that, but eventually I really dived into what I love doing, where I feel most fulfilled and is truly, truly aligned with what I do now, which is peak performance coaching effectively. So really helping high striving, high achieving entrepreneurs to bring the whole spectrum of the physical, the mental, the energy, and their business systems all together so they can reach that level of continuous success. And it's not just these peaks and troughs or that kind of doldrums where people kind of get stuck, which is a place that lots of high achievers sort of get to. They try to do it all, and often it's a case of putting the puzzle pieces in alignment. So I'd say a lot of the journey was not always easy, but an absolute stubbornness and defiance that nothing was going to kind of get in my way of better things or greater things, and just facing every challenge as it came, and just taking the leap when cool opportunities came my way to see what happens. So
Amazing. That's an amazing story. A part of, the title that you have on your website and all that is a life rebrand artist. Right. And I think that's really poignant, right? Because you've gone through, like these different stages where at first glance, you don't necessarily see how they are connected to each other, or they don't logically lead one into the next, into the next, into the next. Can you talk a little bit about that, about what a life rebrand artist is, and like how that figures into the coaching that you provide today?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I really believe in the fact that your kind of outcomes, your future, and the way you interpret it, information that's coming in, or challenges that come in, or your situation, you really have a choice how you're going to interpret that and what you're going to do with that, how you're going to use that information to either grow from it, stay stuck, or go backwards. And lots of people are very afraid of what if, and what if something, what if I fail? Yes, but also what if I succeed? And they don't sort of want to break out of this comfy zone, which is, to be honest, it's just human nature. We want to stay on the straight and narrow, and we want to stay protected. And so it's nothing sort of that we should be ashamed of within ourselves, but it can really hold us back. I absolutely, through circumstances that I wouldn't have necessarily chosen, have had to face a situation where everything I'd planned, everything in my life has really sort of been torn apart. And how do you deal with that? And I think there's a lot of people that get very, very dragged down by it. And I 100% believe that you need to manage that situation. You need to feel the emotions. You need to let yourself tap into the fact that this situation is tragic, or this is horrible for you, or incredibly stressful, or incredibly sad, or you're so angry about what's happened. All of those emotions you must feel, and you must not push them away. However, what is far more important than what happens and how you feel about it is what you do next, because life keeps moving forward. Everything keeps moving forward, and it's your choice whether you keep up with that train or not. So I am a big, big believer in the bounce back. And I have this phrase, kind of like, you can always have a rebrand when you need one. You don't need to wait for some life-changing tragedy. You don't need to wait for New Year's. You don't need to wait till your 50th birthday. You've got enough experience, advice, you know enough about yourself that you can change whenever you need to. And I think a lot of people are waiting for some sort of confirmation, or waiting for some sort of sign from above that they can step into the whatever version they want to try next. It may not be the thing that they keep for another 20 years, but there's no reason that we can't explore different versions of ourselves. So how I bring that in coaching is really supporting people through those times of transition, whether that's elevating themselves within their business, going from 6 to multiple 6 or 6 to 7 figures, or they're transitioning from a corporate space out into entrepreneurship, or hey, they're actually an individual that's very, very successful, but their life's falling down and in certain areas, and they really want to bring up that side and align their business and their lifestyle. So where I come in is really sort of supporting people with that kind of almost like the permission, or helping them feel that they can make that decision, giving them the empowering them to take ownership of whatever the brand they want to create next is.
That was so eloquently spoken, because basically what you're talking about here is that anyone can really reinvent themselves, whether it's through a divorce, whether it's through a career change, whether it's just like, something, this sucks, and I want to move on. I want to do something else,
And
and
I so believe, I spend a lot of my time sort of saying that people don't need to wait for this tragedy. You don't need to wait for a divorce. Like, sometimes we have these things and our life there's a before and an after, and our life fractures, right? We have that time before, the way we were, and the time after, and it won't be the same. And for some people, that is incredibly difficult time, very, very, upsetting time for many people. For some people, it is the absolutely formative thing that makes them. But it doesn't necessarily have to be so grandiose. You may just decide, for no other reason than, it's the time, I have a feeling that you want to change things. And so I really do sort of not believe that you have to have a tragedy. And certainly from my personal experience, I had a tragedy in my life when I was very, very severely ill and given a very short time to live. And I'm very fortunate to be here, but it was a good another 9 or 10 years till I was able to fully process all of that and fully do the deep work that I needed to around things that happened before that time, things that during that time, and the kind of confusion after, before I stepped into true alignment. So I often sort of say to people that it's a bit of a myth that we have, that we see in the movies, that, you know, you have that car crash and in this life, you know, you meet your Prince Charming and everything changes. It's not always like that, actually. And there's no guarantee that you're wishing for this tragedy, or you're wanting this tragedy, or waiting for a tragedy. There's no guarantee anything will happen straight afterwards. And that's when this Rebrand artist comes in right now. You are the artist of your own life, and you need to know when you need to close a chapter, or turn the page of on the easel, or whatever it is, and start drawing a new one. And you can absolutely do that from whenever you choose.
You hit on something really interesting that I want to elaborate on, which is do the work, right?
Yeah.
You really do need to do the work in order to, in order to make it happen. Your life, you are not going to magically have another career dropped on your lap. You are not going to have a new amazing spouse just show up and, smile at you and say everything is going to be okay. You have to do the work in order to get this kind of stuff, right? And part of that is being really intentional and being really actionable about the work that you need to do. So, let's talk about that. That's part of your one big tip, which is when when you know that you have to do the work in order to get something done, that you need to make sure that these steps are taken care of before you can go on to the next milestone. You have to not only articulate what it is that needs to happen, but you actually need to get them done. And what happens, like, at least for me, I'm guilty of this as well, is, like, you can, like, anyone can make a huge to-do list, right? But those lists very often can be very overwhelming. They can also be very general, right? These are like big, hairy, sometimes people mistake, the to-do list as a goal list, right?
Yeah.
And if you do that, that's not necessarily what the goal definitely needs to be there. That needs to be the high level, the north star of what you're going for. But the to-do list, the actual actions that you need to get done, that's where you're actually doing the work. Let's talk a little bit about how you help people figure out what the actual work is in order to make these in order to make this happen for themselves. How does that look like in your world?
Well, that's so interesting. And I think a big part of this is taking responsibility. And that's a huge thing that I really work on with people, appreciating that actually a lot of the outcomes in our lives isn't a consequence of our beginnings, or our history, or the people around us. It's the choices we make. We make the choice to carry the past with us. We make the choice with who we surround ourselves with, and with if we let negativity into our worlds. We make a choice on how we deal with those actions. But understanding that really, yes, you can align your energy, and you can really focus on those big goals. And if you really embody those, the world will serve you things in amazing ways. But it is a co-creation activity. You can't just wait for something to give you the answers. And like we were saying, kind of people wait for this life splitting moment. There's no guarantee that will change anything, because it is this co-creation. You may be served up that on a plate, but it's what you do about it then that matters. But you can look at this from the big picture, and really understanding, doing that deep work to know what it is that you want. So those goals, like you talk about, knowing what those goals are. But then it's a case of, okay, everyone can have big goals. Like, I would absolutely love to, be a gold medalist at the 100-meter sprint, but just wanting to do that's not going to get me very far. And my actions right now are not aligned to that. So me being able to run a half marathon is not going to get me that sprinting gold medal. So there's often a misalignment of what we do, or what's happening right now, and where we actually want to get to. But we can bring that down a level to really the day-to-day actions, because ultimately, if we win our hours, we win our days, we win our weeks, win our months, and then it's much easier to win our years, and we look back and see what we've achieved. But a lot of people kind of overestimate what they can achieve in a day, and very underestimate what they can achieve kind of in longer periods of time. So it's a case of breaking that down. But like you say, people do list all the list all of this stuff. And at the end of the day, they haven't really moved forward at the end of the week or the end of the season, and actually, time's passed and they haven't got towards this thing. And traditionally, kind of when people are writing these to-do lists, or we get these actions and these, these smart goals or whatever, and we write these lists, we kind of get it a little bit wrong, because we kind of create or identify the what, but we don't identify the steps to get us there, and we don't get anything that's kind of measurable or that we can really sort of move towards gradually. We only go for the big picture. So really, really simple example of how this works. So you might have on your list right now that welcome email sequence that everyone kind of forgets about, but we all want a welcome email sequence. So you might have that on a list somewhere, but having that on a list somewhere you're going to look at, and you're probably going to look at again, and it's like, oh, I might put an hour towards that, but it's very difficult to chunk that down. And it's like the way our brain works as well. We see this big task, and we see the kind of the what it is, but we don't understand the how, and then things get in the way. However, if you break down the email sequence, and different people need it broken down in different ways, but it may be a case of going, okay, instead of the email sequence, I need to write 10 subject lines. Or you could even be breaking down further. On your to-do list, you could kind of write them in lines, or you could just literally have go to website provider, or go to email service provider, open this project, and really identify each step that you physically have to take. And you can go sort of email service provider, welcome sequence campaign, then write subject line, then write first paragraph. And you will be able to tick off these things, and they're actual actions, because you can't do a thing. You can't do a what. You can't do an email campaign, but you can, type on your keyboard. You can open that software. And often once we get over that first hurdle and we're in it, and we get over those first 21 to 23 minutes that we need to focus in, get into the deep work zone, then it's amazing what we can do. So really looking at how you can look at some of these goals and look at some of these tasks a little bit differently, and break them down into actionable chunks that then you can reflect on and go, hey, I have actually achieved this, can be a really, really useful, like handy tip for you, that you can play on a very small scale, even things like, especially tasks you don't really want to do. So it's not a case of go shopping, it's kind of go shopping and buy XYZ, or it's not a case of make tea, it's boil potatoes, or like boil potatoes, put meat in oven. Things like this, when you can actually break it down and you can see your progress, can be really, really helpful. And you can apply that for the small stuff, but you can also apply it for much bigger things as well. So you have a goal to get to X figures in your business, but what are the steps that you need to dedicate yourself and take full responsibility for as well, every single day or every single week, in order to achieve that?
That is amazing advice, because basically what you're talking about here is, really articulating and thinking through what actually needs to get done, right? So, like I'm a productivity nerd. I've used just about every, like to-do list software, like I've, tried some offline stuff, where you're writing down in a book, all that stuff, right? And I've had another guest on this show that said you should actually schedule your to-dos, right? Because so what that you put 50 things on a list, but if you actually block out the hour and a half it's going to take you to, like you said, write that email campaign or write that welcome email, but still take the time, not just to write out the the 5-word sentence of what you want done, but take the extra 5 minutes to articulate, that there are specific steps that need to happen in order to, in order to truly mark that closed, right? So you can pull at some
really
stats.
easy if you get interrupted as well, then you can go back, because if you've written down the 20 steps you take and you've only got to step 13, you get distracted, but you come back and you dive right into, like, in terms of getting yourself back in the zone, it's much quicker. And the exact same thing happens in life. So, hey, you have this big goal to do whatever launch in your business, but you get distracted because someone in your life is unwell or something like that, and you get lost along the way, and then often it gets later and later, or it doesn't happen, or whatever. But if you've actually got a really clear path in mind of where you're going to get to and how you're going to do that, then interruptions aren't so significant. You can come back around and achieve those goals.
That is amazing advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Jem, can you please tell everyone how they can learn more about you and how they can reach out to you directly if they'd like to learn more?
Oh, awesome. Well, I would absolutely love to connect with anyone that's listening. I always love networking with fellow entrepreneurs and business people. But the best place to go is www.carriejemimacooper.com, where you can find my services. You can get a call with me if you want to just chat strategy or see a little bit more about me. And I also have a book that I'm very soon to launch. It's very exciting. So it's in ebook format right now on the website. And then I'm going to be launching on Amazon and hard copy very soon. But if you just want to chat or you want to see if I'm a real human or not, you can head to Instagram at Gem Cooper and I will be in the DMs.
Amazing stuff. Thank you so much for sharing all that today. I really appreciate you taking the time, even with the time difference, that we have, it's been a really great conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.